on. There we go. All right. And now I think we're good to go. Looks like we've got a nice group here. Appreciate your hanging on for this. So let me start with sort of the obvious one, and you know, what did you like from what you heard? What resonated with you? And anybody go ahead and unmute and fire away.
Thought it was interesting to hear motivations for people moving between public and private sector one way or the other. You know, I run a small consulting firm here in California, and it's interesting when people leave us, they don't go to competitors, they tend to go to the public sector, or they leave the industry. And but it's interesting to hear the perspectives of others who are moving around. I'd like to see more people moving from public sector to private here. I haven't seen that personally.
Yeah.
Keep thinking we should get it back. It should even out over time, you know.
Yeah, probably should even out over time, I think, and we're in trouble if it doesn't. Thanks,
Yeah.
Mark. Yeah, good. Who else? What else resonated with you? What'd you like to hear?
For me, this is Steve. It was the first speaker talking about the value and how the values that you place on your staff and team members as part of the retention of why should I stay here?
Yep. That was a little nebulous to me. Maybe you've got a better sense for what that term value really meant. I wanted him to put a little meat on the bone there.
Yeah, I just scribbled down a couple of things, you know, the financial part, keeping when you give a raise or a spot incentive bonus or a spot award, to make sure that it raises the pay check, not just the pay stub.
Yeah. Okay. Yep. Good point there. Yep.
And the acknowledging and the work environment. Those were all, you don't hire a warm body, you hire a teammate.
Yeah. That for sure, that if it's going to be somebody that stays for a good long time,
Yeah.
Keeper. Yeah.
I'm one of those people that went from private to public to state DOT back to private.
Oh, okay. Hit them all. All right.
Yes.
Yeah. My big move was I was academic for many years, and then went to the public sector, DOT. So we didn't hear mention of academic there. That's yet kind of a unique niche over there too.
Yeah.
So good. Any other thoughts from others? What you liked? What resonated? Okay, and then how about the flip side? Is what did they miss? What were you wanting to hear or hoping to hear, didn't hear?
I think it becomes hard in an environment like this, and these quick sort of 10-15 minute snippets, you paint with a broad brush.
Yeah.
And one of the things I've long thought is there's a real difference in how someone who's coming out of school, maybe they've got student loans, they view their work and their loyalty, I think, differently. It's not just generational. I don't want to, generalize too much, but someone who's 22 or 25 has a different mindset than someone who's 35 or 50 or 65. You're at different places in your career.
Yeah.
And one of the ways that I've looked at it with our firm is I sort of divided into three buckets. There's compensation, which is always important. You want to feel valued, right? There's your career, and then there's the community, the people you work with, the environment that you work with. And you value each of those things, but you might value them differently at different places in your career. And you'll understand them differently. You'll gain perspective on that a little later in your career. Neelam, a few minutes ago, made a very good point. She's talking about, well, I understood that I was taking a lower base salary, but with the benefits, that total compensation was actually going to be okay and I'd be fine. It's also a cost of living differential where she was going from and where she was going. And it takes a little bit of perspective and maturity to understand that, I think. That's not something that's going to be readily apparent to someone who's coming out of school and, thinking, oh, I'm going to retire someday. It's like, no, I gotta pay rent next week. There's a difference in your perspective and being able to put that together. But yeah, total compensation package is important. But I think all of those, I call those the 3 C's: the career, compensation, and community, and the value of those. And you have to kind of pay attention to all of that to have retention.
Colin sort of hit on that too, when he was saying he made several moves at different life stages, sort of corresponding there. And I was kind of wanting to hear more of that, of, okay, which stage and what was the move, and how did the thought process, maybe we're setting ourselves up there for a series of different webinars, early career, a mid-career, a later career, retirement stage, maybe 4 different ones. It's a great point, Mark. Thanks.
Yeah.
Good. Other follow up on that, or other thoughts? What got missed, or what did you want to hear?
One thing that has been a topic of other town halls and webinars is just the qualified labor pool that we're facing right now, which makes the retention even more important. Once you can find a good one, trying to keep him or her.
And there was a question, they gave us some kind of canned moderator questions here, and that was a question, if things got a little light here, I was supposed to ask to you all was, in your experience, are you facing that kind of competition from other industries? In particular, they cited the software industry, but or if there is competition there, what other industry? What's your sense there, Steve? What do you think?
We don't see that when you get put out a request for a certain experience level in transportation, traffic engineering, and you get someone that's been a manager at Burger King applying. It's a little rough. Obviously, if you're asking for a 5 or 10 year and you get a new EIT, okay, they're stretching, that's fine. But when you get someone that's selling shoes and then applying for a senior manager level in engineering, there's just either people are just flinging resumes because it's so easy to on many of these sites, or they're not paying attention. And it's like, do we really want that on our team? So just trying to find qualified respondents is a struggle.
We have the opposite effect. I don't know where you're all located, but so I'm in Northern California, and we basically are sitting in Silicon Valley. And so the influence of the .com world is prevalent. So we have employees. My former firm that I worked for, I see Dennis Pasco here, and he and I worked together in a prior life. And what we would see is people who'd leave to find their fame and fortune in the .com and in software. I guess if I thought about it more recently, we had someone who left a year ago to go work for big data, related to transportation, but sometimes they just leave, to go work for, another, just the influence of that. But it also affects the expectations employees have coming in. Hey, how come we don't have stock options? How come there's no cafeteria? Hey, we should have bikes. And I'm picking on Dennis just to make him appear, and so I can say hi. Hey, man. But those are questions we get from employees. And you asked earlier about something that could be beneficial, perhaps in another round of this kind of webinar. I have a small firm. Okay, we're 24 people, something like that. We're not 250. We're not 1,800. We're not we're not AECOM. There's scales. right? So it limits what I think we're able to do and how much time we can invest on some of this. Not that it's not important, but there is a scale difference. You're talking about, like, the HR department is also, the transportation planning director, who's the chief cook, candlestick maker. I forget the expression, but you get the idea.
How many hats?
Yeah, we do it all.
On the other hand, if you had to buy donuts for everybody every morning, there wouldn't be many donuts. So, that's.
Yeah,
that's
we
really
save
helpful too.
we save a lot on that.
Dennis, how you doing?
Good.
What can you contribute here?
No, I totally agree with Mark. I'm in California too. Our company's based up. I'm in Southern California, but our company has offices all over the state. And yeah, we're having a hard time finding qualified candidates. I mean, we're getting a ton of candidates, but and some may have some peripheral experience in transportation. They may be planning majors that took a class. And and none of them have any experience in operations. We have to go to civil engineers for that. And the same thing, I think we had 2 instances where they were existing employees, they were contract employees at like Google and some other another high tech firm in the Silicon Valley, and they just took the job because it was just a high paying job. They needed them, but they wanted to come back and study planning. And we're offering them, and we're trying to be competitive, and I would say we're a competitive firm, but we're not. We're like $15,000 to $20,000 less in our salary offering. So we got one of them. One of them did want to go back into planning, and she didn't see herself being at Google for a long time, so we took her. But again, she has 0 experience in transportation, but she seemed the brightest. And you're right, we're picking people that will fit the firm, that will fit our group,
the culture.
And you can always train them if you find the right person that's applied and smart and is a good fit and gets along with everyone. That's great. And hi Mark, Steve, and Philip. It's been a while, so good to see you guys.
Yeah, I'm in Arizona these days, so not much different, except for the high tech.
High tech, yeah.
In North Carolina, we have some competition from software. SAS is the big company in our neighborhood that competes for talent occasionally, and then every once in a while we'll lose somebody to biotech. They decide they want to go do real science.
I lost someone to biotech, but he became like the TDM coordinator for Genentech. I was like, "You going to biotech?" He's like, well, he's running the buses for Genentech. Yeah. And some of these tech firms run some pretty serious transit systems, by the way. I was alarmed when I saw some of the numbers of how many buses Google runs, or Facebook, or Apple, or Genentech. Their TDM programs are much bigger and more robust than some others.
Good.
But that also leads to their culture too.
Nobody, unless I missed it, nobody mentioned COVID or work at home type of issues during their presentation. Is that sort of receding now? Is that sort of becoming normalized, or what do y'all think?
I think there's regional differences. We discussed this. I'm a international director for ITE, also from the Western District, and we were discussing this at the recent IBOD meeting, and the regional differences are palpable. For sure. How's it in Arizona and how's it in North Carolina? Because I'm curious before I tell you what's going on here.
Yes.
I'll start. It depends. As you can see, I'm remote right now. It's not my office in the background. But what we're finding is that entry-level EIT, that type people want to work remote, but we're finding it a challenge to mentor them, that the mentoring that they need to move forward in their career remotely. More senior staff, you can work just about anywhere because of your experience, design, knowledge, and coordination. But it's difficult to going back to hiring the right staff and keeping the staff. Oh, I want to work remote and I'm an EIT. How does that work for you? So that's one challenge that we're working through.
Yeah, North Carolina, I think public sector and most of our firms have kind of settled into where most people are working a half a week at home, or our agency is three days in the office, 2 days at home, and kind of settle into that. And I asked a question thinking that that's sort of become an expectation now, pretty well settled into that. And obviously I'm working at home today as well as part of that. So, I think my take, answering my own question, the reason the speakers didn't address it was maybe it has kind of settled in and it's not that big a deal anymore.
Yeah, I've heard of some instances where there's mandates, we're going back into the office and, setting up schedules and things. And we were pretty careful. We talked to staff a lot during COVID about expectations and just wanting to be really cognizant and sensitive to what everyone's going through. And everyone was going through something different. I'm in downtown Oakland. We're all BART commuters. Our office is right outside of BART station. That's by design. We're back in on a hybrid schedule, but we didn't, mandate anything other than, work it out in terms of what days you want to come in. Let's be flexible. There's definitely an energy in the office when people are here. It's harder to onboard and bring on new staff. We have found that some of the staff that we hired during COVID, think it's great. They're working at home, all the time, and that's what they know. And it's like, well, you don't know what you don't know. Also, there's a little bit of, mentoring and just sort of that interaction you get, in an environment with other people that you really don't get through a virtual environment. I might be old school thinking that way, but that's what I believe. And I've seen it. And so we're trying to be sensitive to make sure that, we're being responsive to staff in this area, in the San Francisco Bay Area, and probably the influence of tech and all of that. There's a lot of pushback to going back to an office, though. For us, the issue was not coming back to an office. It was, when will I feel comfortable riding transit? And that just cuts at the core of what we do, right? When I've got to talk to, a dozen staff say, look, I'm not sure I feel comfortable getting back on the train just yet. I'm like, that's hard for us, because what are we doing? We're promoting multimodalism and, all of this. And we're all back doing it now. And we realize, it's okay. There's ways to do it safely. And about half we still have a lot of people wearing masks in this area. I know that's not necessarily true elsewhere. But there's a high percentage of masks, very high percentage of people who just got their third booster, that kind of thing. So but it is real. We're in that endemic phase of COVID, learning to live with it. I will say, not having to go to night meetings and council chambers and the planning commission and all of that, we all do a lot of that. If you want to keep that virtual, I'm all for it. Coming back from this, Fresno or something at, midnight and making that trek home or whatever it was. I don't miss that part of it. It's, and those meetings have turned out to be okay.
You don't miss I-5 and the Thule fog? Come on.
Nope. Especially in, nowadays, particularly in winter. No, it's kind of a different take on the meetings and the amount of time spent just going back and forth, and to be there for 5 or 10 minutes or whatever what it might be.
For us, it was the 2-hour project meeting in Charlotte, which Charlotte is a 3 hours drive away. So man, it just kills the whole day. And now it's Zoom or Teams, and I got most of my day back. So, one other factor I've heard my boss moan about is 3 days a week in the office is just enough where he can't reduce the amount of space we have. So we have to keep all of our space. We don't get a break on the rent.
Yeah, we just moved. Our lease came up during COVID. We gave it up. and then we recently came back in May into an office back downtown. So we saved a lot on rent. We were lucky with the timing of things, but then trying to figure out what's the amount of space we need and how to, do we want to have people sharing offices? Do we want, what kind of space? What's the layout? I think that's going to be an interesting shift for us to watch as traffic engineers. Offices are still there's a high vacancy rate, at least in our area. And so when people say, well, are we seeing a lot of office projects? How many people will they accommodate? Something that previously accommodated, 1,000 people, maybe now it's 2,000 if they're all sharing space. And does that really matter for trip generation? Do we really care if someone's coming in 3 days or 2 days? If what's the occupancy of the building? That's an interesting change we're going to have to watch, I think, professionally.
I think you hit on a good point there for trip generation. Is that, how does that affect it? If it's 3 days a week, okay, that's pretty much most likely Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, still the normal peak days, still the normal peak hours. But on an ADT basis, if we're not traveling from office to a site or to an agency and back, is that reducing the office ADT?
Yeah.
And you're wandering over into one other factor that I thought of while I was listening to the speakers was job security. Because my prediction for several years now has been that traffic impact analysis, the side of our business that deals with serving private development, is going to go off a cliff any minute. I've been wrong so far, but I still think that's about to happen. And those firms and those engineers and planners that serve developers are going to go off the cliff with them, just like 2008. Job security depends on which sector you work in and what type of company or what type of firm. Reactions to that?
I'm not seeing that on our end here. I work for Dudek, and we're primarily we're an engineering firm, but we also our biggest profit group is our CEQA NEPA group, all the planners. So all of our work is all traffic study, based, and anything to support CEQA and NEPA and SEPA in Seattle. And we're having a hard time hiring people to do traffic studies. So we've got staff right now that are just overworked.
Okay.
We can't deliver stuff on time. So I'm not seeing that here in California.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We found that in the past, it's those of us who've been doing this long enough, it's cyclical, right? So every time there's a recession, we're a lagging industry. Eventually that private development will be put on hold or will stop. Things that were in the pipeline kind of continue. Although a lot of people are talking about the infrastructure bill is going to push a lot of work in terms of advancing that side of the projects. But then when the recession stops, like it's like instant, like everyone comes back to us like wildfire, like let's just do this. So it comes back very quickly. So it takes a while to hit us, but then when it comes back, so it's an odd industry to kind of track. We talk about it internally in terms of what's our resiliency strategy and diversification of work, so that we're not just tied to, one particular area. But like Dennis, we're not seeing any slowdown at this point, and our backlog is, it could always, they can pull projects, but it's very robust right now. When you're talking about it in terms of like, job security, and gentleman from Kimley Horn was talking about loyalty, and I spend a fair amount of time. I like to read about differences across generations and how do you manage people from different generations, and I think the concept of loyalty is very different. And one of the things which both Dennis, I'm speaking for Dennis, although I shouldn't, but we both face this, which is when you live in an area where the cost of living is so high, staff don't even look at, like, the American dream doesn't exist. Like, they're never going to be able to buy a house. That's how they think. They're like, that's not our goal. And it's like, when you talk about, long-term compensation and building wealth and security for your family, on and on and on. And that is so, it's really lost. And it's not a good thing. It makes it very hard to recruit people to come to the area and then to retain them. When they think about, oh, I'm giving up a 6-bedroom house in, Provo or wherever to live in a condo or a studio apartment somewhere, and then, what the cost of housing and affordable housing plays into the cost of living. So that for us is also a big issue with retention, is the cost of what it takes to live here.
Yeah.
And so we have been talking a lot about, well, maybe we need to rethink about how do we use remote employees? What makes sense? Where is it more affordable to live, and how would we accommodate that within the structure that we have? How does that work? What does it mean for us? Does that mean just in state? Do we have to start thinking more out of state? What are the implications of that? For a smaller firm, these are things that we haven't tackled before. But
different pay scales depending on where people are living.
Yeah, there's all sorts of things, some pay scales to what you have to do in terms of benefits and taxes. And then, how do you integrate them into the company? How important is that? What role do they play? Can you do that with a new hire who's, like an entry level, or can you do that with a more senior person? Can you do it with both? It's challenging. Those are real questions that we're grappling with right now.
Hey, Philip.
Hey guys, just wanted to jump in and give my 2 cents. I know there's a lot of discussion in regards to retention. I work for the city of Riverside now. So I think we have the same challenges as everybody else when you're trying to retain employees. We actually had a mass exodus, I'd say, the past 6 months with some staff, not in the traffic department, but in maybe more like the planning department. They lost a lot of senior management to other jurisdictions for bigger roles, senior roles. But in regards to retention, there is one thing the city of Riverside did that I thought was really well thought out, which is it was an employee engagement survey. And this is not a measly survey. It was a time-consuming effort. There's like maybe half an hour to fill out. And within that survey, it covered a lot of items that employees wanted to address, work-life balance, telecommuting, pay, benefits, politics even, and then as a result of that employee engagement survey, we hired a consultant to help us out. And then that consultant, put the questions in a graphical format. These are the reasons why, employees are considering leaving. These are the reasons why employees came, and what's making them want to stay. So that was a good idea, and it broke things down. And then at the end of that, there were some action items for the managers and the senior management. What can you do to address these issues from the employees? Is it communication? Is it workload? Is it staffing? Schedule? And then the biggest one, the one that we're talking about right now, is telecommuting. So that was a hot topic, as just like everybody else when the pandemic began. We had to telecommute. We had to. And then we slowly brought everybody back in, and then we switched to a hybrid schedule, which is now you're allowed to telecommute 2 days a week, and you have to be in person the rest of the days. There was a lot of discussion about that. There were some employees that were hired right off the bat to be 100% telecommuting. And then there was the discussion about removing telecommuting and being in person 100%. And those employees just flat out said, we're going to quit if you guys go to in person, right? So that was upfront, and I'm very honest with them. And then there's some discussion about the field staff. They've been complaining this whole time. They said telecommuting is not an option for us. We're out in the field. We're maintaining the signals, paving the streets, managing the sewer system or street sweeping or whatever. They don't get that benefit. And some of their survey responses, we should get compensated for that lack of option, right? So those are the things that were discussed. As of right now, there was discussion to potentially move to, in person 100%, but there was so much feedback and support for telecommuting. I don't think we're going to remove it anytime soon. The other thing, the flip side of that is the other agencies adjacent to us, they do offer telecommuting still. So just to be competitive in the market, we had to keep it. You know, otherwise employees might search elsewhere. You know, and then the last thing I was gonna say, which was something that our city council did, which was really, really awesome. They noticed, you know, the price increases everywhere, you know, and the inflation increasing, and then the employees leaving. So we have a lot of unions that were negotiating for an increase in pay. So they put together a plan and they approved it. So we have these COLA increases, an immediate one, like right away, the day after it was awarded or approved at City Council. And then moving forward the next 2 years, we have COLA increases in addition to our merit increases. So the compensation part was taken care of. So that was a really good move by the City Council. So those are some of the elements that we were doing here at the City of Riverside in regards to, you know, recruitment and retention. So just wanted to share that.
That's awesome, Philip. Yeah, we got similar NCDOT 2018. I think the average raise was something like 12%. The range was 5 to 20. All of a sudden we were salary competitive, and dang, that helped.
Yeah.
Retain people. Just to put us in line. We got a couple minutes left. Any last thoughts around the table here?
I was going to mention too that one interesting thing about our company is because we are spread out amongst different offices. And our transportation group is not big. We're about 7 people. So even before COVID, we were always, you know, we've been using Zoom before, you know, months before COVID, and so we would hire new staff, and they would work remotely or in a different office that before COVID. And I think that goes back to the key of hiring the right people. So if you can find people that you can trust, that can work independently, but also will call you, you know, when questions are asked, and not just go off and start billing stuff. That's a big key. And after COVID, you know, our company probably had record profitability during COVID, which was not even expected. And we grew like crazy. So they actually made it's a policy in our company. You can either choose to be 100% in office, 100% remote, or hybrid. And they're very accommodating for that. And they basically bolstered our IT group to make sure that, you know, we won't have any issues with everyone working remotely. And it seems to be working really well at our firm.
Yeah. Excellent. Thanks so much. I enjoyed this discussion. Hope you did too. Got some ideas out of it. They're going to close down this breakout room in about 20 seconds here and move us on out. I think there's a little wrap up after this. I appreciate it. Take
Good to
care.
see you guys. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.